All right, everyone, are you ready for this special guest? All right, I'm very excited. We have a mutual friend, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. She's been on the show before. She connected us because, for me, it's not about the dogma of nutrition. It's about really understanding what foods are aligned with your body, what foods are making you feel good, right? Are you connecting to your body and feeling good eating these foods, right? Less about what the foods you're eating and what your body needs. Well, then I was introduced to Rachel Scheer. She's a functional medicine dietitian. You might not have heard of it, or you might have. But for me, that is the integrative approach, mind, body, and soul, to your eating and your food. So thank you for coming on the show.
Dr. G, it's a pleasure to be on here today.
Yes. Listen, off air, I told you I want to ask right from the get-go, because you had put up this post that college students to adults are suffering with the same level of anxiety as a psychiatric patient in the 1950s?
Yeah. Young adults today have the same levels of anxiety as a psychiatric patient in the 1950s currently. And this is a study that I saw by the American Psychiatric Association. I think that's the APA Association. And I found this to be really groundbreaking and astonishing, and I think a lot of people who hear that, they're like, wow, I can't believe that is the truth. But as a functional medicine dietitian, something that I'm always about is really peeling back the layers and getting to the why. What is the root cause? And that's truly what functional medicine means. Mm-hmm. And I think we have to start to ask the question is, why are so many people suffering with their mental health? Mm-hmm. Why are so many people suffering with anxiety, with burnout and exhaustion? And for a lot of my life, I suffered with that as well. I was into bodybuilding. I was into fitness competitions. That's what actually got me into nutrition and dietetics. And I always constantly found myself hustling for my worthiness, putting my worth in everything that was outside of me, putting it in my physical body. A lot of people, it's putting it in their job, their achievements, and all of these things. And I think we're at a time here in society where, the ego is really dominating, right? And the ego at the core is that illusory self. It is our sense of self that is in all of these other things. It is in our job. It is in our past. It's in our pains. It's in what has happened to us, the good, the bad, the ugly. It's in what other people think of us. And I also think, with right now, so much of our sense of self being based on social media and comparison and all of these things, it makes sense to me why anxiety and depression is really at an all-time high. But it's pretty astonishing to think about that. The psychiatric patient in the 1950s is really our normal here now today.
Yeah, something we've accepted for so long. Maybe it didn't just happen overnight. It was sort of a progression, right, over time. And I've always end up having this conversation at some point about, social media and the phone and how much we rely on it and the role, because we don't know just yet, okay, if you use your phone for 10 years, this is going to happen to your mental health, right? We're sort of in that experimental phase. But what are your theories as to why in the 1950s, people outside of a psychiatric ward were in so much better mental health?
That's an interesting question. And I think a big part of it really comes down to a lot of the comparison. I think a lot of where we are placing our worth in. I think back in the 1950s, we didn't have social media where everybody was posting their highlight reel, right, online. And I think right now, too, we're at an all-time high with the use of medications. And when we go to Western medicine and someone walks in and they have various symptoms, anxiety, depression, and we give them a label based off of that. And we say, hey, you have depression, you have anxiety. And we take these labels on and we treat it with a medication as a byproduct. But I really do think it comes from, this false sense of self that so much of us are based in right now. And I think when it comes to healing, we can talk about healing from a global standpoint, but also from an individual standpoint. It also takes getting to a point where, the ego and the pain really reaches its peak, right? For a lot of people, and I know myself, it took me getting to this place of massive burnout, massive, anxiety and all of these things in my life to really lean into this awakening overall. So I think there can be a little bit of both. Right now, we're at a time where, anxiety and a lot of that is an all-time high, whether it's from our phones and comparison and, but I also think we're also at the peak of a lot of people beginning to wake up as well and wake up to the truth.
Yeah, yeah. And your version of seeing this, what is this waking up? What is the truth then?
Yeah, I think a lot of us walk around very unconscious, right? And unconscious means that we are really living our life based off of our ego. Our ego is our sense of being. It's our identity. It's based off of everything that is outside of us, right? Kind of like I communicated earlier. It's our thoughts. It is our judgment of self. It is our judgment of other people. And it is our past pains all intertwined together. And I think, for a lot of us who go on this healing journey, as long as we are identified with our ego, every attempt to healing is always going to be misdirected because we're trying to heal the ego with the ego. So when we're unconscious, we are identified with all of these things. We're identified with our pain. We're identified with what other people think of us. We're identified with what we think of us based off of all of these things. Ego, EGO, I like to use the acronym as edges God out. So it's this false reality, and I think that's where a lot of us live. That's where a lot of us have been taught to live throughout our life. So healing at the core, right, it is reaching this awakening of, I've been hustling to try to find my sense of worth in my job, my achievements, my body. And although we may have a sense of happiness for a short period, it never really lasts, right? It never really lasts. It doesn't stay. And then we find ourselves right back at this place of trying to get there. And we're always trying to get there. And because we're always trying to get there, we're never actually here. Right? We're never actually in our life. So when we wake up to a lot of this, for a lot of people, it is getting to this point of, what I've been trying to do and what I've been taught to do to achieve happiness and what society has taught me is not working for me. It's not working. And there has to be another way. And in that, I think we start to seek the truth. We start to really peel back the layers, right? We are a human being. And the human side, I describe as like the ego portion of it all. We have the physical body, which when we have a lot of these pains that haven't been healed, they're trapped in the body and they can manifest in dis-ease overall because the body holds on to a lot of these different pains, manifests in gut issues. Over, I think it's 30 or 40% of people who suffer with IBS, autoimmune conditions, they have this unaddressed pain and trauma that is trapped in their body that they haven't fully faced, accepted, and released overall. And I think overall too, when we are constantly identified with that, like I said, it's really difficult to heal. So part of healing is really peeling back those human layers to reveal that being, revealing that being side of who we really are, which is the truth. And that is us in our utter essence.
Yeah.
Our ego, we can also say, is when we're not really present in our life, right? We're always somewhere else. We're in our thoughts, we're in our pain, we're associated with all of these different things in our life. So when we're fully healed, and I think healing is something like we're continuously always walking through.
Yeah.
It's not something like we get to overall, but it's this state of peace and this presence in our life and not always trying to have to necessarily get somewhere else. Does that make sense?
Well, of course it makes sense, yeah. You ever hear of LMNT? This is a very tasty electrolyte drink. It's got everything you need. It's got a lot of salt and no sugar. And why? Well, it contains a science-backed electrolyte ratio of 100 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium. It's got no sugar, no artificial coloring, no artificial ingredients, gluten, or fillers. Now, LMNT is formulated to help anyone with their electrolyte needs and is perfectly suited for any lifestyle, however you eat, whether it's paleo, vegan, keto, low carb. Now, it's important for you to understand, we need to replenish our electrolytes. Whether it's a marathon runner activity, lifestyle, or you're just waking up early in the morning and you need to rehydrate, we need electrolytes to feel good, and our body runs on it. An electrolyte powder like LMNT can help prevent those common symptoms of electrolyte deficiency, like headaches, muscle cramps, fatigue, sleeplessness. Optimal hydration is about balance, specifically the right fluid to electrolyte balance. And now that summer's here, it brings the warmth and sunshine, but you're also going to be sweating. You probably have been all summer already, especially if you've been outside. It's been a hot summer. This is why balance is very important. LMNT's grapefruit salt has returned for the summer. It's my favorite flavor, and it'll help keep you balanced throughout the summer. It's been great to have LMNT as part of my routine. I use it when I'm in the sauna. I use it every morning. I use it in my drinks throughout the day. It's really important, and I feel hydrated. So right now, LMNT is offering you, the Heal Thyself listener, a free sample pack with any purchase. That's 8 single-serving packets, free with any LMNT order. Now, this is a great way to get all of the 8 flavors, trying them out, and figure out which one you want. You can get yours at drinklmnt.com/DRG. The deal is only available through my link. You must go to drinklmnt.com/DRG. LMNT offers no questions asked refunds. It's totally risk-free. If you don't like it, you get your money back, no questions asked. You have nothing to lose. I put up this post that said, you cannot heal someone who feels most safe in their identity of being sick, right? And we speak about identities, and I think what the viewer and listener, we have to understand is this, is our very self of who we are is not the ego. But the ego is there as part of our human experience. You know, we have that freedom as children, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, even 6 and 7 years old. We're in this brainwave state where we are in a state of wonder. Everything in the world is what it is. Pure conscious observation. We don't have much judgment when we see a tree. We don't have much judgment when we see a frog. We're having the true experience of frog and tree. And you know, as we get older, there's this mechanism that happens where our ego comes online very strongly, and it's the autonomy. It's the moment where you have a kid and they go, no, I want to cross the street now by myself. And you're like, what the hell is happening? You can't cross the street by yourself. Okay, no, I want to pick my food. I want to pick my outfit, right? The I starts coming online. But I actually think that's a very important process, because for us to have that sense of self experiencing the world, we need to know that which is not us, to know that which is us, or to remember that which is us. So much of what you said is hitting that point where you experience so much of that which is not you. And whether it's a physical disease or your lowest point in your life, relationship, job, you hit that point where you go, what am I doing? Right? What is this? Look at the identities that I've created for myself, and look where it's gotten me. And oftentimes, you know, there's so many stories and novels that have that journey, that hero's journey, the dark night of the soul, right? Or the darkest point, where we begin to ascend. And I think that ascension to health is a remembrance more than it is a discovery or a journey. It's like, holy shit, all these pieces of me that I've been showing up as are not me. Therefore, who am I? Oh, I'm everything. I am the deepest grief and sadness and anger, but I am the most highest joy, peace, and love and happiness. So that layer, it's a beautiful process that we all go through, and maybe we die and we never go through it, and that's okay. We come back and we do it another way. But this is so much of what I'm hearing from you, in your words, in your own frequency, right? Exactly the same thing. It's like, this is where we are. It's
this unbecoming, really, in a lot of ways. It's peeling back these layers of who we thought we needed to be ultimately, and realizing who we truly are at our core, which is perfect. So going back to that statement of, right, most young adults have the same anxiety levels as a psychiatric patient in the 1950s. I think that's really a byproduct of all of these false identities that have been put on, as a young adult, right? In our 20s, like we are in a very, very high ego state. I know I was when I was in my 20s, like my entire worth was my physical body. I was a fitness model, I was a bodybuilder, and that was my sense of who I was. And because that was my worth, right? And I was always trying to attain what I thought was perfection. This led to exhaustion and burnout and all of these health issues, right? So I think anytime we're operating from that place, we're operating from, the ego, and we're operating from these false identities to try to maintain this identity, which isn't truly who we are. The body gives an opposite pushback, right? We can see this in, let's say, somebody who's an entrepreneur, right? And so much of their worth is based in their job and how much money they're making. And then we see the result of a ton of burnout and, depression, right? Because their body gives this opposite pushback. And the same thing happened for me. From a physical level, I ended up with a bunch of gut issues. I was chronically bloated all the time. My hormones, my thyroid plummeted. My hair started to fall out. And my physical health started to suffer, right? And I went the Western medicine route, as we're all taught to go. I'm like, there's something off in my body. I should probably go to the doctor to get this looked at. They did all of the scans, MRI, CT, colonoscopy, endoscopy. And with my blood work, they were like, yeah, you have low thyroid. Here's thyroid medication. And then with the colonoscopy, endoscopy, they're like, everything looks normal. You are physically healthy, right? I was a fitness model, so I looked pretty healthy from the outside. And I was just given a label of, here you have IBS or irritable bowel syndrome. And I was given laxatives because I couldn't use the restroom anymore. And my body continued to get worse and worse. And no one was really actually looking at this deeper level. No one was actually looking at the place in which I was coming from. Right? The relationship that I had with myself. I had all these different diagnoses. Everybody's trying to fix me, giving me these labels. And if I would have continued to go the traditional Western medicine route, I would be without my entire large intestine right now, because my gut ended up becoming so dysfunctional, dysbiotic, with bacteria overgrowth, where I couldn't even use the restroom at all anymore without doing an enema. Every single day, my life was miserable. And on the outside looking in, I looked healthy. I was a fitness model, a bodybuilder, right? And everybody's following me as this representation of health, but I wasn't a representation of health at all. I was a representation of this false illusion of perfection, where on the inside, I was miserable and my physical health was deteriorating, right? And that's what really led to my awakening, because, I had the decision of either, one, get my entire large intestine cut out, which I was ready to do at that point in my life fully, because when you're that miserable in your life, I totally get people where they're like, just give me the pill, give me the medication. I've been at that point where I've been that desperate. I've been on pretty much, I think, every medication, probably not every medication, but a lot of medications throughout the course of my life. So I know what it's like to be like, just give me what I need right now to fix how I'm feeling. And I dislike where I'm at so much. I got into functional medicine, just learning a lot about the gut and the gut microbiome. And even Western medicine didn't discover that I had bacteria overgrowth or anything like that. They just, they said I had IBS. Right. So I learned this extra layer of getting to the root cause. And from a physical side, I had bacterial overgrowth and dysbiosis and SIBO. And I did all of the antimicrobial protocols to eradicate the bacteria overgrowth. And I did all of the different functional medicine stuff. And I would get a little bit of progress, but then I would relapse. Yeah. And I would constantly relapse. And I kept wondering, like, why? Why can't my body fully heal? And it was when I got to that place where I was seeing some progress, really being able to identify, though, what was off from a physical level, which is why I love functional medicine, because we can really identify from a physical level, how the different systems are impacting each other, from the gut impacting metabolism, hormones, thyroid, adrenals, mental health. I still had to answer the question of, why is all of this happening?
Yeah. And it's what what is important to understand is you were talking about you were fit, right? You had good muscle tone, right? Working out, sweating. And we value the physical so much that is our picture of health. But on the inside, and this should be such a clear indicator that the physical is downstream of the mental, which is downstream of the emotional, right? So if your emotional state is all messed up, your mental health is going to be messed up for a few years. And then that's going to lead into physical disruption. I mean, you don't know how many times I've seen people say, man, I've done all of the supplements and I've done all the foods. I'm doing it right. I work out. I meditate 10 times a day, you know? They're like, I just don't know what's going on. And we talk about, and you mentioned, so much is still in our body, right? And for me, that's where I go back to that fountainhead coming from the emotional. If we're not addressing those repressed emotions, which are having compensations to mental disruption, which are leading to physical disruption, then what are we doing? And we're looking at the physical here in medicine, right? In the dietetics industry. We're still looking at the physical, right? What's your BMI, right? How's your blood pressure look? Great, that's very important. But we're missing the huge chunk. We're missing a 50% chunk of what health is, right? That mental, emotional aspect. So what were some of the best things then? Because you were really suffering, what I'm hearing. What were the things that really transformed your health?
I really had to identify the way in which I was relating to myself. And that's kind of a big word to explain relate to self, but we're always relating to ourself. And the way in which we relate to ourself directly creates and impacts all of our relationships and all of our circumstances. So what do I mean by relate to self? Well, it's the relationship we have with ourself, which is the view of ourself, right? And I had these unconscious views of myself. I had no idea that I had, based off of my upbringing, based off of a lot of my own trauma that I hadn't really healed through, that were creating various behaviors in my life. And these behaviors, whether it was critical perfectionism, you know, I'd say I'm very, very disciplined, and that's one of my God-given gifts, but it can be taken and used on like the ego, the striving side of everything too. It created these various behaviors, which thus created my circumstances, my relationships overall. I just started off with like the traditional route of like go to talk therapy, right? And there's some emotional stuff and I really need to uncover this. And, you know, that kind of opened the door a little bit for me. I think talk therapy though, right, it still keeps it on like this very surface level side. It's not enough. I think for a lot of people, it can be kind of like the gateway drug, like of opening up more to their healing journey. For a lot of people who haven't talked ever about the things that they've walked through or their pains or the things that are coming up in their head, it gives them an opportunity to do so. But it's really just a starting point for a much deeper level of work that needs to be done. And for me, you know, I've been on my healing journey, I'd say, since I was 24 years old. I'm 30 years old now. So for like the last 6 years, 24 was when I had all of my really bad gut issues, 23, 24 overall. And, you know, it hasn't been like one thing. And I think that's a big message I want to get across to everybody is that it hasn't been like this one thing, this one coach that I worked with, this one thing that I did. It has been this continuation of peeling back these layers slowly and slowly overall over time. But I really had to get back to the root. What is the way in which I was viewing myself? And I realized, you know, I've been carrying around a lot of these beliefs of myself that stemmed from my upbringing, my childhood. You know, I grew up with a lot of neglect. My mom was physically absent when I was growing up. So she was out partying, drinking, doing drugs. And then my dad was emotionally absent as a byproduct of my mom. You know, my mom sleeping with all these men, bringing them home to our house. Well, my dad and my siblings still lived in that home together. And so my dad was just in his own world and stuff. So I created various meanings as a young girl about myself that I didn't matter, right? Because my mom was out doing her thing and my dad wasn't absent. So I created these meanings of I don't matter. I don't matter. And this wasn't a conscious belief, right? This is something that's been revealed as I've gone throughout my entire healing journey of what those beliefs were. But I created the meaning of I don't matter. What I have to say doesn't matter. And I began to relate to myself from that place, which created being very critical, behaviors of criticalness of myself. Actually, we tend to think critical always means of other people, but I was the most critical of myself. The most critical of myself. I was the little girl in school who wouldn't speak up, who would like sit in the back of the class, who was very shy, very, very reserved, would like raise my hand partially here.
Right.
And then when the teacher would call on me, I'd like speak very quietly.
Yeah.
I wouldn't really use my voice. And that was all a byproduct of the way I was relating to myself. And this carried on into being a young adult. I got into bodybuilding and fitness, which gave me a sense of control, right? Because I have this belief of I don't matter. So what am I going to do? Try to strive to prove that I do matter through my physical body. And that then led to the circumstances that I had in my life. And this, led to relationship issues that I had, insecurities around that. This led to physical health issues, the burnout, all of that. And we get in this cycle. And this is what the cycle a lot of us get in. This is the pain cycle. It is these core beliefs we have of ourselves that we created, right? What happened when I was younger with my mom, in my upbringing, it actually didn't mean anything about me. I made that mean something about me. I created that meaning to that. And in that pain, I held on to that. This is all very unconscious, right? This isn't like a choice. I held on to that. And by holding on to that, I continuously had this way of viewing myself, leading to various behaviors and creating my life as I know it. And I think healing is really creating that awareness. It's this release of fear, right? Because so much of that is very fear-driven. Something that I've used recently that has really helped me and has helped a lot of my clients, it is first identifying some of these core beliefs and where they come from, and you can go back to in your life, some of the big incidences, you can write them all out on a piece of paper. I have done that before where I went through like all of the traumatic things that have ever happened to me. I wrote them out in my journal. And in all of that, I tried to go back to them and like, what did I make these mean about me? And I started to ask those questions. What did I make this mean about me? And in doing that practice in of itself, I was able to see that all of these meanings that I made weren't actually the truth. They weren't actually the truth of who I was. Although it had impacted my life and things had happened to me, it wasn't because of me. That was really the big difference. So I think the first thing for a lot of people is getting to this place of awareness.
Yeah.
Is getting to this place of awareness that, I have these pains, I have these things that I've walked through, but I am not those things. I am not those things, and realize the place that we've really been operating from. So that's that awareness piece. And for a lot of us, as we become the observer and just becoming more aware of this, we're no longer the program, right? And we can begin to disassociate from that. And sometimes we use disassociation as a bad thing, right? Of like, I'm disassociated from my life. That's not what I'm talking about. This is disassociating from the identity that we have in a lot of these pains and these traumas that have happened in our life. And after that, after we really can disidentify, I think it's from there we can really face them. We can't heal from anything as long as we're identified with it. But in becoming the observer and noticing these pains, I think we can really begin to take ownership for them as well. So I use the analogy A-dog. So that was the awareness piece. D is the disidentification. O is that ownership piece, right? And for a lot of people, ownership is hard to really explain, to understand. So I always give the analogy of, a grounded mama with a kid in the grocery store who's throwing a fit, and if you've ever seen a little kid, who's like, Mom, buy me buy me whatever candy bar
Yeah.
he wants. And he's on the ground and he's throwing this tantrum, right? There's one way that the parent could handle this is she could get in front of the kid and be like, stop it right now. Trying to get him to stop. And what does the kid do?
Goes louder.
He starts kicking and screaming louder, right? That's not ownership. Ownership is that grounded mama. So that's that mama who gets down on the same level as the kid who's throwing the tantrum and holds space for him, doesn't try to make him stop, doesn't judge him, doesn't do any of those things, just holds space and allows him to do what he needs to do. And eventually that little kid starts to calm down. So it's this ownership is holding place. It's being that grounded mama for ourselves. So in that, when we have different emotions, and oftentimes like we become so disconnected with our body, we don't even know there's these deep-rooted emotions inside of us, right? So as we start to take ownership, it's really first paying attention to what is in the body for a lot of women, right? When we actually, I think men too, but I work with a lot of women, when we actually slow down and we get into our body and we start to like pay attention and we create space, there's all this emotion there that wants to come up. And it's easy to want to like get rid of it, right? That's like the kid is like, stop it right now. And whatever we resist persists, and that keeps that pain trapped in the body. But if we can show up like that grounded mama for that pain, hold space for it, say, hey, I'm going to allow this to be there. I'm not going to judge it. I'm going to actually accept it and embrace it fully. And sometimes it's feeling whatever charge is there. Sometimes you'll actually feel that sensation in the body and just allow that to come out of the body. I know for myself, it's been bawling. I've screamed in a pillow. Like there can be a lot that's there. And in that is you actually healing in those moments. Sometimes we think it's backwards, right? We're like, no, I don't want this because this means I'm going backwards, and we're afraid of it. But it's in that release, it's in that ownership that we are actually healing in that moment. And from there, getting into the G of the A-Dog, that's grounding ourselves back into the present moment, right? So we allow what needs to come up, and then we can ground ourselves back into the present moment. So that's getting into our bodies. Sometimes that's feeling our hands. Sometimes that is, paying attention to the energy inside of our body, our breath. I love getting in nature because it keeps me very, very present. And it's continuously doing this like over and over again. And eventually we notice there's less of a charge. And that's when we can know that we are healing based off of the level of peace that we feel in our life.
I feel that. This, and you said a lot of very important points. Your journey is your unique journey, but it's unique in your experience and the ingredients. But all of us have the parental experiences that have created compensations, which create the story, and not only create the story, revalidate the story. Because I'm sure there was moments where you were like, I don't matter, and that frequency is coming out of you, and you're just experiencing I don't matter more and more and more. And it's becoming more confirmed, and the ego goes, see, I know, I told you, I don't matter, right? And then the compensations come, and then I'm gonna matter. And you do all the things that are achieving.
Trying to prove that I do matter.
Trying to prove, right? And that is an endless thing. But it could be the same way with, I'm going to start a company because I matter, and I'm going to impress my dad, or, who I never mattered for, or my mom who I never mattered for. And, you become like this billionaire CEO, and you still trying to matter, right? It's still, we all have the same experiences, just with different ingredients and different stories.
For sure.
Which brings me to your formula, which is really important. The first level is that awareness. First level is going, hold up. Wait, this is my life. And so much of this life that I've created and relationships around it are rooted in this pain. They're literally rooted in this story that was created when I was young, when I didn't know better, right? Because we as children, we're beautifully self-centered, right? If mom's crying, we're not thinking about she's crying because of the bills, or we're not thinking about she's crying because she got
my fault,
demoted.
right?
It's my fault, right? So imagine then the stories that happen when we're kids, And we forget that we created that story. We forget that it's perpetuated. We forget that it's revalidated through our lives. So the awareness is like, okay, this is the product of my life. Now, with your techniques that the writing so simple, go back. Hey, I remember this in first grade. In 8th grade, this was really big for me. High school, college, boom, 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 boom. And then really, really, as you said, bringing that awareness about like, what did you think about yourself? What was the story that was created from that? A lot of us will say, okay, just do you remember that? And no, yeah, I guess. Well, can you forgive? Yeah, right? No. How did that compensate in your life? And then I love A-Dog. That's
A-Dog.
Easy thing to remember. Let's just so we remember. A is awareness.
Awareness.
D.
Disidentify.
Disidentify. O.
Ownership.
Ownership, the mama, grounded mama. And G.
Grounding.
Grounding. Perfect. All of us look at that. That acronym can be life-changing for us. And you said, it's not just a one-time around, it's an over
You're
and over.
You're constantly doing it. I'm still using it, even honestly this morning. Mm-hmm. Like I noticed some things coming up. I've been traveling here for the last week and a half and going on all these podcasts and speaking, and I never sleep very well. And one of my biggest triggers is not sleeping well, because then I get into this place of, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to show up my best. And then I start, putting my identity in that. And I'm at a place where it's not like that doesn't happen anymore. And that's also too what I want to communicate with people. And that's why it's healing. Yeah. It's healing. And anytime you also up level in your life, like when I'm going on a bigger podcast or a bigger stage to speak to, there's also a lot more that starts to come up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I thought that I had healed through this. And it's like, I did, but now there's another layer to it, right? And I think that's what's so beautiful about this experience is it is continuously healing. And as we continue to do the healing work on ourselves, I also think we're able to impact that many more people. And I think that's really our divine purpose that we are given from God. We were given a lot of these things purposely. A lot of us can look back and be like, why do these things have to happen to me? I wish they didn't. You know what? I was terribly insecure. I could barely speak. I could barely use my voice. And because I've healed through that and gone through my own healing journey and also all the things physically from the fitness side, now I've been able to step into a place where what I do is literally speaking, sharing my story on stages, talking about healing, taking the things that I've walked through and then turning it outward and being able to impact that many more people. And as I continue to do the healing work, I'm able to actually bring love into other people and bring more awareness into other people. And I think that's the divine purpose that we all have. It was given to us, for us to heal through. So we can find that God-given, that divine purpose for our life. And the coolest thing is then being able to look back and be like, you know what? Thank you, God. Thank you so much for giving me all of those trials and these challenges, because I would not be the person that I am here today without it. And I bet even the same for you with the work you do.
Yeah, 100%. I believe that we choose so many of the trial and tribulations before we're even incarnated into this earth, right? We, through free will, have our experiences, but things are going to happen in our life. And they're for a reason. We had one of my close friends, fantastic doctor, Dr. JT, that came here. And he was talking about, that's part of the journey, man. The purpose, for you to find your purpose and live your purpose, you have to have those experiences, right? To see that which you are not and that which you are, and to embody that which you are through those experiences. But divine purpose, and the way you said it, is so important. I believe we're here to embody who we are and remind other people who they are, right? And who we are is unconditional love, but not romantic love. Not the movie stuff, not the hugs and kisses. We're talking about unconditional love being that container that can hold your darkest dark and your highest high, right? The deepest anger, grief, shame, guilt, and the highest love, joy, happiness, elation, radiance, whatever. Like when we were kids, right? I actually think most of us are just so damn sick and unhappy because we're not embodying the things that we want to do as we did when we were children, right? I think if we go outside, I'll be too embarrassed to look at the tree and want to climb it in my podcast clothes, right? And you'll be too embarrassed to, hopscotch on the thing that you see, right? Because, oh my God, no, the people around us, we just live in this fear. And which comes back to what you said, that fear state. I think that fear frequency is driven for most of society. And a great way to round this out is, I just believe we're living in more fear than we were in the 1950s. Sure, there was always the threat of war, right? And come in the 60s, Vietnam, all of the things that happened, yes. But we are fed more fear. We have accessibility to more fear-based agendas, right? Turn on the TV, I remember the last time I ever watched the news. I counted. The first 7 stories were about fear. The first 7 stories were how someone in my neighborhood was killed, and then how this is happening in the world. Oh, we're gonna die because of this country. 7 stories. I go, I can't believe that I just noticed how much fear we're living in. And it's not only just like your threat of your security, it's also the fear that you open up something and look at someone and go, look at their life. Why isn't my life like this? Maybe one day it'll be like this. Yeah. And I think it just comes down to fear and love, but unconditional love we're talking about. I think every emotion comes from fear. So what I hear from you is you said, I'm going to move away from this state of fear that has been making me sick, especially my digestive system. And I'm going to use my own acronym that is going to empower me and move me away from fear into that present state of love of who I am. That's it, right? And wow, how accessible is it to go, oh wait, am I living in fear or am I living in love? The words I'm saying to you, is it in fear or love? The decisions I'm making outside in the parking lot, the decisions I'm making when I get home, right? My relationships, fear or love. You might notice that most of your relationships are rooted in that vibration of fear.
Yeah, and you can always know if you're coming from that place of fear by any emotion that is really coming up, right?
Yeah.
And I think if we tune in with ourselves, right, if there is anger, if there is anxiety, we're not coming from a place of love. We're not relating from that place. And oftentimes we also think that the opposite of love is hatred. It's not. It is fear, truly at the core. So our life purpose is getting back to fear. I like to give the definition of health as inner peace and wholeness. We could say on the physical level, it is everything in alignment internally in the body. But from a spiritual level, it is wholeness. It is oneness. It is love, 100%, where illness, right, there on the physical side are imbalances in the body, there's dis-ease, but also on the spiritual side is external searching. So when we can release that external searching, which is very fear-driven, and we can come back to this place of wholeness, which is health, that's when we are in a place in love, just like you said, not a romantic type of love overall, but we have love for ourselves. We have love for other people. And that's why, anytime I meet somebody who is incredibly judgmental or critical and putting other people down, I know intuitively that there's not love there for themselves, because how we view and see other people is really a reflection back of what we see in ourselves. It's love for God. We feel connected to God. When we feel connected to ourselves, we have love for ourselves, and we're able to reflect that back to other people overall. And I think that's the gift, and that's our external purpose, right? So internal purpose is a lot of this healing and getting back to that place of love. It's that unbecoming. And then our external purpose is really being able to give that to other people. And we can have a life calling, right? And that will change over time, meaning that's the work that I do, the mission and that kind of stuff. I'm not talking necessarily about a calling. I'm talking about external purposes. Every person you meet, can you give that gift to them? Every person you meet, not just when you're, in a work setting, you're making money off of it, right? That's a whole nother area. Yeah. And I think you can have your purpose in that, but can you give that to somebody else? Can you help someone walk away feeling truly seen, right? And I think part of when you've been able to do a lot of this work on yourself and get to that place of being in spirit, right? The word inspiration means in spirit. And that's where I think true inspiration is born from, right? We're fully in alignment with ourselves and our most authentic truth of who we are. And from that, we are able to create beautiful things. And we're inspired. We're inspired to do different things. And we're able to give that to other people. And people are like, wow, I'm so inspired by that person. But not because of what they did, because of who they were.
Big difference.
Big difference.
Right? It's wow, they went on stage and said some inspiring things. Okay, but how about when they walk past you and you feel their energy, right? Who they are, who they embody, what they are as a human being. That is the most powerful thing. So I want everyone to notice this. In front of me, I have a dietitian. We didn't mention once about food. We didn't talk about one vegetable, one fruit. We didn't talk about no grains. We didn't talk about no seed oils. We didn't talk about nothing. And I want you to understand, it's because from this stuff arises your true embodiment of physical health. All the other stuff, very important. Eat your prebiotic foods, right? Eat the fiber-rich foods, right? The antioxidants, very important. But we have to go upstream. And what we're talking about is upstream. Very important to pay attention to this to everyone, right? Because we're so stuck in the physical. What should I eat? What shouldn't I eat? The bigger question is, let's bring more awareness into what parts of you are holding you back from being the highest version of yourself. Where is everyone going to find you?
You can check me out on my website, rachelscheer.com, and follow me on Instagram, Rachel Scheer.
Amazing stuff. And you have clients they can work with.
I have a functional medicine nutrition practice. You can find that at rachelscheer.com. So we do all of the testing, the hormones, the adrenals, the gut microbiome, toxins, deficiencies, identify what is off physically. But what's so different about my practice is, we really want to get to that root cause. And the root cause isn't always just on the physical level. It is. I had someone last week who came back with a parasite, and we do a parasite protocol, and I'm like, okay, this is probably what's causing your gut issues. But there's a lot of things that can cause the body to be off. And I think for a lot of people, yes, we need to address the physical, but we also need to have these deeper levels of conversations. And that's where the whole person can begin to heal.
I love that. Amen. Thank you for coming on. I really see you and the work you've done in your own experience of all the things that have sponsored your life that are not you, that moment. And then you said, I'm ready to change this. A-dog it. And then shift. So all the viewers and listeners, go check her out. Put these works into practice. Bring more awareness, if not today, then tomorrow morning. Get it going. I really hope you enjoyed it. And thank you so much.
Thank you.